Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the November 15th, 2021 regular meeting of the Cinnaminson Township Committee. Everyone please rise and join me in saluting the flag. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. Notice of this meeting was published in the Burlington County Times and the Courier Post on January 8th, 2021. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Kondo?
Here.
Mr. Horner?
Here.
Mr. McGill?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Craybill?
Present.
Mayor Seagrass?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move right into committee liaison reports. Committee member Conda, Administration, Health, and Senior Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to keep the meeting moving along quickly as I have nothing to report this month, so we can move on.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Horner for Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one item to report on this evening. Very happy to report this. The township will be settling on the property formerly known as the Azalea Farm, which is earmarked for a senior living memory care facility with Westrum as early as next week, provided that the attorneys for the parties can dot all the i's and cross all the t's, but most definitely within the next 30 days. Very happy to report that, and that concludes my remarks this evening.
No pressure. Thank you, Mr. Horner. That's great news. Committeeman Ernest McGill for Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it short and sweet also. October activity report for the police department. Total incidents responded to was 2167. Total arrests made were 27. Total property checks, 573. Total motor vehicle stops at 282. Total motor vehicle summonses was 149. And total DWI arrests were 7. That's all I have for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. Deputy Mayor Crable, Parks, Recreation, and Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to Parks and Recreation, we have some activities and events coming up in the next couple of weeks. The Township Holiday Lighting Celebration will take place Saturday, December 4th at 5:30 at Wood Park. There will be musical performances, hot chocolate, cookies, and children's activities. Also wanted to remind everybody that Breakfast with Santa is scheduled for Sunday, December 12th, the Marion, from 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Crable. For Public Works, myself, crews are currently working through Section 3 collecting leaves. Residents are reminded to keep leaf piles at least 10 feet away from stormwater inlets. December will be the last month for curbside leaf collection. Residents are encouraged to visit the township's website, www.cinnaminson.nj.org, for collection schedule. Residents are always permitted to drop off leaves and brush at the Public Works yard 7 days a week in the designated bins throughout the year. Bins are located at the secondary entrance of the Public Works facility, located closer to Route 130 on Union Landing Road. Bulk collection dates for December are Wednesday, December 1st, and Thursday, December 2nd. That is for trash. As part of the PSE&G gas main replacement project, to date 9 roads have been restored with new asphalt as part of the project. One other note is for township street paving. We have plans to pave the memorial lots at Memorial Field, and we are putting that off until spring. But that's still going to be done. That completes my report. Items up for discussion tonight, best practices inventory. Mr. Schubiger, can you give some additional detail regarding the best practices inventory?
Sure, Mayor. Each year, the township is required by the Division of Local Government Services to complete a best practices inventory. Each municipality within the state is required to do so. This year, there were 27 competencies on that inventory. I'm happy to report the township met 26 out of the 27 of those competencies, which means we by far passed that test. The one competency on that, on this year's inventory had to do with having public electric vehicle charging stations, not just within the township boundary, but on municipal land. We do not. So that's something that we can talk about and look into and examine as we move ahead. But other than that, we met all the competencies. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew we're in good shape. And that does tie into state aid. If we were ever to be in a position not to have, is it 80%? I think it's, whatever that number is, state aid is something that becomes an issue. We're by far nowhere near that. So, good news. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Schubager.
Okay.
We have one ordinance tonight for a public hearing. Ordinance 2021-13, amending Chapter 356 of the General Code of the Township of Cinnaminson entitled Motels and Temporary Housing Accommodations. May I have a motion to open the public comment on Ordinance 2021-13, please?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to open public comments on ordinance 2021-13.
Thank you, Mr. Conda. I will second that. Voice vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention, ayes have it. Public comment on ordinance 2021-13 is now open. If you'd like to make a comment, please step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Not seeing anyone come forward. May I have a motion to close the public comment on ordinance 2021-13, please?
I'll make a motion to close public comment on ordinance 2021-13.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crable. I will second that as well. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, abstention, ayes have it. May I have a motion to approve ordinance 2021-13?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-13.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. May I have a second, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Horner. Roll call vote, please, Madam Secretary.
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Conda.
Aye.
Mr. Horner.
Aye.
Mr. McGill.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Craybill.
Aye.
Mayor Segrest.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. As always, Mr. Schubager, can you give some detail regarding the resolutions on tonight's agenda?
Sure, Mayor. There are a number of resolutions tonight, starting with Resolution 149, which is authorizing the release of a performance bond for the Walmart Real Estate Business Trust. This recommendation comes to us from our township engineer, Remington and Vernick, for the expansion project over at Walmart. The recommendation is for the release of the performance guarantee in the total amount of $2,066,217.30. The majority of that is in the form of a bond, which is a small amount in the form of cash. And then in addition to that, a stormwater management maintenance guarantee in the amount of $787.50, and a landscape buffer maintenance guarantee in the amount of $17,322.75. Again, Remington and Vernick has reviewed the project, performed their necessary inspections, and those are the recommendations. Resolution 150 is authorization for the submission of an application for New Jersey Department of Transportation's Local Freight Impact Fund Grant, which is for the reconstruction of Taylor's Lane. Township engineer Remington and Vernick has completed the application. They're ready to submit. And that grant proposal will be in the amount of $1,075,000. And that will be the entire stretch of Taylor's Lane from Broad Street up to Route 130 to the intersection, which of course is state operated, not township. That deadline is November 26th, which makes tonight's meeting very timely for us to authorize the submission of that grant. Resolution 151 is for the award of a contract for fencing at Memorial Park and a gate at the Public Works facility, which comes as a recommendation from our Public Works Superintendent. The fencing is for Field 5 at Memorial in the amount of $22,750, and the parking lot gate in the amount of $7,250. Our CFO, Ms. Edmondson, has determined that that qualifies for a non-fair and open contract for you to authorize tonight. Resolution 152
is for the cancellation of taxes for a demolished residential structure as recommended by our tax assessor, Mr. Dennis DeClerc. And then, if I may, Mayor, Resolutions 153 through Resolutions 157 are all refunds, cancellations and refunds that have to do with totally disabled veterans who are eligible for that benefit, which we've seen several times in the past, over the course of the past several months. And the final resolution, there's one property maintenance assessment recommended by our code enforcement officer, Mr. Marshall, for Public Works Department work that was required as a result of that violation. That concludes my comments on those resolutions, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Schubiger. That's the end of the consent agenda. May I have a motion to open public comment on the consent agenda items only?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to open up public comment on the consent agenda items only.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. I will second that. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, abstention, ayes have it. Public comment on the consent agenda is now open. If you'd like to make a comment, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Not seeing anyone come forward, may I have a motion to close public comment on the consent agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to close public comment on the consent agenda items only.
Thank you, Mr. Conda. I will second that as well. Voice vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention, ayes have it. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Mr. Horner. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crable. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Conda.
Aye.
Mr. Horner.
Aye.
Mr. McGill.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Cagle.
Aye.
Mayor Seeger.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2021?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 18, 2021 as read.
Thank you, sir. May I have a second, please?
Mr. Mayor, I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Conda. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please, again?
Mr. Conda.
Aye.
Mr. Horner.
Aye.
Mr. McGill.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Cagle.
Aye.
Mayor Seeger.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to approval of the bills. May I have a motion to approve the bill list, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the bill list.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. May I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crable. Madam Secretary, again, roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Conda.
Aye.
Mr. Horner.
Aye.
Mr. McGill.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Cagle.
Aye.
Mayor Seeger.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to staff and professional comments. Any members of the staff or professionals have comments tonight? No?
Just for me, I just want to publicly congratulate you, Mayor, and Kamin Kanda on being reelected for additional terms on Township Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Platt.
Welcome.
We're now going to move on to public comment. May I have a motion to open public comment, please?
I'll make a motion to open public comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crable. May I have a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Conda. Voice vote, all in favor. Aye?
Aye.
Nays, abstention, ayes have it. Public comment is now open. If you'd like to make a comment or have a question, please step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Mr. Goins?
Mike Coyne, 100 Purnell. So last month, we approved Resolution 2021-148, which was temporary sign for needle. And as you recall at that meeting, I asked, about the size, the length of time, that type of thing. And when Lidl was approved, I attended that meeting back on the case number was 202. So I'm familiar with what we kind of proved from recollection. And the way the ordinance is written is they cannot exceed. Now, right now, they have a 200 square foot mobile sign where the maximum is 14 square foot. And they can only leave it up for 14 days. And the zoning says the only way you can grant them is through a variance. So my question is, back to what I said last month, is, why aren't we doing something to benefit them? Because now they're in violation and it should be removed.
Eric?
And to Eric's defense, I just sent this to Eric 4:30,
Well,
so.
thank you. All right, so you did, and my response to you was, I wanted to acknowledge it. I know it was short, I didn't give you much detail.
Yeah.
But I was in between.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm
so,
just saying,
thank
he didn't
you.
have a chance to review.
Yeah, I got about an hour ago. So, you,
If I could,
I think-
Mr. Goins, when you were here at the last meeting, I'm not sure if the sign was actually, was the sign erected at that time?
No, it went up Saturday,
Okay, so it appears the sign may be outside the
right.
parameters of the ordinance. Now, the resolution you refer to indicates that we, as the redevelopment authority, the township committee as redevelopment authority, we're giving the authorization to have a temporary or mobile sign in accordance with
Right.
Chapter 525. It appears to be in excess of what is permitted. As a redevelopment authority, we do have some ability to exceed the local ordinance. However, I really have to look into this and confer with Mr. Schubiger, Mr. Marshall, because if in fact it does exceed the parameters and the way the resolution is drafted, it would be in accordance with Chapter 525, and it's not in accordance with, then they may have to remove the sign.
Right, because chapter 525, 118 says, variances, any person seeking adjustments to the strict application of this section to post a temporary sign shall file an application for variance according with zoning procedures established in this chapter. And I went through the whole chapter, and the variance is the only way. So I understand what
Well,
you're
it's not
saying.
the only law, this is an ordinance, there's a state statute that governs redevelopment, and there is an ability of a redevelopment authority to do a lot of different things. So, and we have that authority and that power, and I want to make sure that that authority doesn't
Okay,
conflict
and
with.
if it.
And I want
if-
to make sure, so we can, that authority doesn't conflict with the fact that it appears, from what you're saying, that they're in violation of our local ordinance.
Right, so my question right now is, are we gonna tell legal to remove the sign?
Not yet, I have to confer, review it, sir, and then confer with the governing body and determine if in fact they have to do that.
I'm telling you right now, I don't like the answer, because that's why I brought it up last time, saying, hey, it didn't make sense for them to only put up the sign for 14 days to attract employees, you know? So even the length.
so you're, just want to make it clear, so what we're going to be examining, and quickly, is the length of time that there's temporary signage and the size of the signage, are the two
Right,
things,
it's
right?
14 days
Okay.
by, and
Okay.
14.
Well, I'm actually going to look, if I could, I'm going to look at everything, I want to make
Right.
sure but I'm, to the extent that the code is in conflict with the authority of this committee as the redevelopment authority, with redevelopment powers, in an area that's been declared in need of redevelopment, that is a redevelopment plan, there may be an ability to supersede these requirements.
Okay.
So, and
there
it's
is, I would
okay
like
if
to
you
have
don't
that
like-
information.
And so we have to mull it over and decide whether in fact those powers and that authority supersedes what you're telling us, and I have no reason to doubt you. I'm taking everything that you're saying as
Right.
being true. So when you suggest that you don't like the answer, it is a reasonable answer to give me a chance to take a look at this,
I
right?
agree, and I'm just asking if you find that in something else to let me know what that is and
Absolutely.
my response.
So I think, listen, you've been, listen, the idea seems good, but it's still have to follow the law, right? So,
Well, and that's why I said the last meeting that it says in accordance with, so I just couldn't imagine them putting up a little 12-foot square foot sign, you know, for 14 days.
then that's
Didn't
fine.
make sense.
And what you're saying was, what you're saying had some merit then, and what you're saying tonight certainly has merit. Who knows what they were going to do? We could not predict, right? So now that we know, you happen to be right, you'll let me know who you pick for football next Sunday, and we can talk
No.
about that as well.
No.
But in any event, we're gonna look into it and see if the redevelopment powers allow us to supersede that for this temporary sign or not, and then we'll have an answer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for bringing this up again.
All right, and the last issue is on the trailers. And I know I sent you a bunch of pictures on that, and you said you could talk to the committee on that. So that's the only other thing. So I don't know if you had a chance or not.
I know that went to the right people for sure, Mr. Goins.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goins, thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome, Mayor.
Dan Young, 116 Woodview Lane. Good evening. I just have some comments. I'd like to offer some suggestions. Your ordinance for your public hearing, it might help the general public to know essentially what we're amending, just as a thought. Because it's very broad, but unless somebody pulled it and read it, nobody knows what you did. It's just a thought.
Good point.
Secondly, the application for the grant on Taylor's Lane. A pretty good hunk of Taylor's Lane was repaved 5 years ago. Not quite sure why we need to repave it again in the grant system, so somebody ought to take that into consideration. But everywhere that we laid that new sewer line up that road was repaved, and it was repaved to the state spec full depth. So that's just a suggestion on that as well. The third thing is I see that, and I spoke to the mayor about this, I see that we're repaving the Public Works facility. Two questions. One, did anybody ever find out what kind of a deal we got out of Joe Brickley for the original commitment that we had on when he put the tower in the back and laid the gas line that they would repave? And I'm assuming they repaved because the gas line went in, so somebody must have paved. So again, we're repaving something that's less than 5 years old. Second part of that is, I'm curious as to why we're paying prevailing rate to pave the parking lot when we could do it with our own staff for a lot less money. So why are we paying that extra money out to do that parking lot? We certainly, we have our own paving crew, we do our own paving. Why would we not pave our own lot?
Kevin, you want to take any of that? It's funny that you brought, I knew that,
As I walked up here, we knew that was gonna come up.
I knew we were gonna talk about this. I talked to Kevin just prior to the meeting.
Kevin Galt, Superintendent Public Works. I'll address the second one first. Assuming when you assume second additional contractor, you're probably assuming APS. APS did the reconstruction, so they did a base repair. My employees paved the top 2. So we did all the asphalt, top 3 inches at the Public Works facility.
Why didn't we do it all?
Because we don't have the equipment or the knowledge to do the pulverization, stabilization in place. So what that is essentially.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna,
Yeah, mixing it.
yeah, so essentially, for everyone who doesn't know what it is, cement binder was mixed in within the current sub-base, recycled, and then hardened. We don't own the equipment.
We couldn't do, I know we don't, we've done it with standard stone.
You can, but this is a recycled product. It goes down to a depth of 10 inches. If you do recycled DGA or state-based DGA, sometimes it goes deeper. You're welcome.
I know we have the expertise, but okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I may make a suggestion.
Absolutely.
I know Mr. Gaunt's has an open door policy, and instead of having a back and forth on every detail of that project, I'm sure he'd be happy to share with you, Mr. Young, anytime, some of the details. He answered the question. I know you may disagree. Kevin is knowledgeable and knows his staff. I'm sure he'd welcome the time to talk to you for additional details on anything like that, but that's just my suggestion.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. My last question is, you mentioned the leaf collection, that it's posted online. What happened to the signs? We used to put signs out for the people so everybody got 10 days' notice, they knew we were coming. Makes sense,
Yeah, it's a good point.
because everybody's raking their leaves right now on my street, which we just went through this week. I think you ought to revisit that.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, as always.
Mayor, if I may, there was one point Mr. Young raised that was not addressed, a couple, but as far as the ordinance, would you like me to speak to that now?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay? So,
You mean the motel?
yes,
Yeah, gotcha.
yes. So basically what that is the motels require a license each year that's handled through our clerk's office. This ordinance provides the motel owner the option of having a third-party inspector of their motel if they so choose. And Chief Calabrese has a lot of experience with this issue. He may want to add additional comments. On occasion, there is some resistance to such licensure, I think that's the right word. And after reviewing statute and consulting with Mr. Platt and his colleagues, that's what we came up with, is to provide that as an option. Does that about sum it up, Chief?
Yes, just does.
Okay. That's what it was.
I think that perhaps Mr. Young's point is that as we go through, like we go through the resolutions,
Right.
perhaps on first or second reading, that a brief summary be given as well prior to voting on it. I would imagine you were thinking, so that was, that's what I think it was. So thank you for explaining it, and I think it was more of a timing issue.
And that's on me, because typically when we do the public hearing, I'll make a few comments, and I didn't get in quick enough, Mayor, so.
No, that's okay. And
We'll make
I know
a
that we
point to do that next time.
Yeah, thank you.
And Mr. Young, you'll forgive Mr. Schubager, correct?
That's okay.
We've already forgiven each other.
I want to give anyone else an opportunity to come up. Any comments at all? All right, not seeing anyone else come forward. May I have a motion to close public comment, please?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to close public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Conda. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crable. Voice vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention, ayes have it. We're now going to move on to committee comment. Committee comment follows roll call. So that would be Mr. Conda, Mr. Horner, Mr. McGill, Deputy Mayor Crable, and then myself. Any comments tonight, Mr. Conda?
Absolutely not. See, it's an easy night for you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Horner?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McGill?
Yes, real quick, I'd like to echo my colleagues' sentiments towards Thanksgiving. And also, as I usually do, I'd like to thank Public Works, Police Department, Fire Department, our administration, personnel, our solicitor, and our professionals for continuing to do their duty and keeping this township running. I know the numbers are starting to go up a little bit, but these guys are the epitome of class, and I appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. Deputy Mayor Crable?
I would like to just echo the Thanksgiving comments. I know that we are still in the midst of COVID, and I just want to express that however you decide to spend the time with your family next week, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person, just enjoy that time together, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crable. I echo the comments of my committee members. Mr. Conda, congratulations. Lastly, I want to wish everybody a healthy and happy Thanksgiving. It is my personal favorite holiday. Thanksgiving is an important one. It's a positive and secular holiday where we celebrate gratitude. It's something that we don't do enough of these days. That is my comment. Thank you. We are now going to move into a closed session. Mr. Platt,
Yes.
do we anticipate taking any official action?
I do not anticipate taking any action, although we reserve the right to do so. And when you make the motion, please indicate specifically, as listed in the agenda, what the executive session is for. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Platt. Closed session for Resolution 2021-159, authorizing executive session for attorney-client matters regarding the following potential litigation. Attorney-client matter.
By the way, for members of the public and community, expect that discussion to take approximately 15 to 20 minutes.
Excellent. Excellent. May I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make the motion to go into closed session, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. May I have a second, please?
Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Horner. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays, abstention, ayes have it. We're going to move into closed session. You're more than welcome to stick around. We should be in closed session for approximately 15 minutes.